All right, so this is part 2 of the good versus bad foods. Of course, those are in quotations if you're not watching the video. So in part 1, I was just kind of getting my feet wet with what I consider or how you should consider food rather than good versus bad. In this video, it's going to be much shorter because I really just want to address ingredients and things like that, because although I don't consider food good versus bad, there are a few, I'll say, ingredients that I think people should really avoid no matter what. And that's not because they're good or bad, but because of the health implications that they do have, and the way that they've been shown to affect people metabolically, which just means like within your body, and your metabolism. So the first food that, here, I'm going to open a whiteboard again. I think this is helpful for some visuals. Okay, foods to avoid. So I'm really going to start with no matter who you are, you should really not be ingesting these foods if you can help it. Obviously, like if you're going out to eat, or if you're eating at someone's house, or what have you, sometimes these foods just can't be avoided, and there are things that you can do to offset eating them. And I'll talk about what offsetting actually means in the next video. All right, I'm writing that down. Okay, so foods that you should avoid. I have a whole list that I will be attaching to this video. No matter who you are. All right, so first and foremost, really, this is probably the number one. Like if you're only going to avoid one thing, then this should be it. Otherwise, like I think that there are different, again, like it depends how you react to certain things. And if you're following the rotation diet, then it might be a lot easier for you to avoid them more often and be like, get away with, in quotes, eating them every so often. But the one thing that I think that most people should really avoid no matter what, and make sure that they're trying to make substitute for, is going to be hydrogenated oils. All right, so examples of this would be soybean oil, canola oil, rape seed and rapeseed oil, corn oil. Let's see, there's like a long list of these. Basically like, vegetable oil. We'll just put Crisco on the list. Mixed vegetable oil, and like any other oil except all right, so good ones to incorporate: extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, and coconut oil. So the reason for this, first and foremost, is because hydrogenated oils are what we call, well, they're hydrogenated oils. Okay, but they are loaded with omega-6s, which is a fatty acid. And if you watch the fatty acid video, then you would know that fatty acids are basically partially what fats are made from and broken down into. Okay, so there's a few other components to that, but really that fatty acid is a main thing in that. So the omega-6s is, those things are named like omega-3, omega-6, omega-9. Those are all named based on basically the structure of the fatty acid. So if it has a double bond, and if you've never taken chemistry, I'm sorry, at the 6 location. Okay, so it basically just changes where like a double bond is in the chain. Okay, and the thing is, first, omega-6s are not inherently good or bad, right? So not good or bad. We need omega-6s for different chemical processes in our body. But the thing is, nowadays, we get so much more omega-6 in our diet than omega-3, okay? Which is why people are like, you need to take an omega-3 supplement. You need to take cod liver oil or a fatty acid. Like, I'm sure you've heard all of this stuff, right? And the reason is because we just don't get enough omega-3 in our diet. So the ratio should really be omega-6 to omega-3. I'm going to write this down so you can see this. So the ratio would look like omega-6 to omega-3 in our diets should equal 2 to 1 or 1 to 1. Okay. Closer to 1 to 1 is probably more ideal, but like 2 to 1 is pretty good. But today, the ratio is closer to 10 to 1 or 20 to 1. So you can see that's like 5 to 10 times more or even greater than you should be getting in terms of omega-6s. All right, so what that's doing is basically causing an inflammatory response in the body. So the way that you can think of inflammation is first, like let's say, have you ever gotten a cut and then like it's healing and it turns all red? Maybe there's some pus around it or coming out of it. And then it starts healing and then there's a white, but then there's like maybe a little swollen. All right, that's inflammation, swelling, redness, pus, like all this kind of stuff. The thing is, inflammation is a natural part of our body's response to things that should not be happening to us, or that's not the right way of looking at it, but like if something is hurting us or if something is breaking down, then inflammation occurs to help the healing process. So really, inflammation is a healing process, okay? But that's acute inflammation. If we have chronic inflammation, such as from a bad or a ill or omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, and basically your body is constantly under inflammation, then that's when it becomes a problem and it leads to chronic diseases. Okay, so one of the reasons that you should not be eating hydrogenated oils is because they're basically only omega-6s. So you're basically just like putting fuel on the fire. Okay. Second reason is because when these hydrogenated oils are processed, you have to understand that all of these things that I've listed, soybean, canola, rapeseed, corn, vegetable, like who knows what mix of that is, like those things aren't naturally oily. Okay, so in order for them to become an oil, especially in the amount that people are making, they have to go through a very heavily processed or processing. Okay, so chemicals have to be added to them, usually something called hexane. I'm not going to get into because it's not a chemistry class. Chemicals go into them and high heat go into them. And then usually some other things I'm blanking right now, but these are the main two. So these two things are added to the oils to break them down, or added to the vegetables to break them down into oil. Now, because when the processing occurs, the chemicals aren't necessarily left in the oil. It's run with the chemicals in order to break them down. And it's probably not in large enough quantities compared to whatever's being turned into the oil, that they don't have to put it on the ingredients. So nobody ever knows that these chemicals are in the oils. Okay. And then high heat, what that's doing is basically, I mean, as you can see, it's breaking it down. So let's say it's taking cottonseed, which is another one I missed. It's taking cottonseed and it's breaking it down at such a high temperature. But if you think about it, like it's happening at such a high temperature that it's actually breaking down any good molecules or things that could potentially contribute to health. It's just breaking them all down. And in that same process, it's turning these fatty acids into basically structures that they're not supposed to be in. So let's say the omega-3 goes into our system and it's meant to look like, whoops, wrong one. Yeah. So let's say the fatty acid is meant to look like this, and here's the double bond, okay? And when it goes through the chemical process, it ends up looking like this, okay? So that's just, this is like a trans fat, this is a cis fat, if you've ever heard, or sorry, trans cis. Same side, opposite side. Okay, that's why it's called that. Again, not a chemistry class. So basically, during this processing, it changes the molecular structure. And what that's going to do is it's going to be any fat that you put into your body, it actually gets embedded into your cells. Like our cells are made up of fats. So if you're getting molecules that are not structured the way that they're supposed to be structured, then you can think about your cell as, instead of being this like very fluid thing, it's kind of like this really rigid, like you're trying to push up against it, but it's like you're pushing up against a wall. It doesn't move. It's really hard. It's viscous. So that's what's happening to your cells. So if you ever feel like super lethargic or tired all the time, and you're like, man, what am I doing? Like, how do I get out of this? I would really highly suggest looking into, if you have any hydrogenated oils in your diet, and maybe switching out those for something like the extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil. Okay, so that's the first one, and really the main one. And the other thing I'll say is there are a few other oils, or there are different brands as well that you could do that aren't extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, that can still be good for you, but they just can't be heated. Okay, so things would be like sesame oil, not bad, especially if it's processed, like it cold pressed. If it's cold pressed, then it hasn't been heated, and you just put it on food after you're done cooking it, then that's perfectly, like, it's, there's none of this like structural change that's going on. Same thing for like a really good, very well processed like macadamia nut oil, and like different things like that, where like, you know that there's natural oils in it. So the processing of it makes like more sense for it to become an oil, and shelf stable. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. The second thing I'll say about this is, when I go to the grocery store with people and I'm like, okay, like, make sure that none of the food that you're getting has any of these oils in it. And they literally start looking at all the packaging and they're like, this is literally in everything. Like, what am I supposed to eat? Okay, so when that happens, let me tell you this. The first thing is you should be trying to eat as many whole foods or minimally processed foods as possible. So a lot of foods are processed, but you shouldn't be eating like the ultra processed foods, okay? So I want you to understand that first. But the second thing is like, if you're making a replacement and there's a certain kind of chip or cracker that has a better nutrition profile, like in terms of the macros, and there's way less ingredients, and all the ingredients like you can actually read, compared to like this other cracker chip that you've tended to go to all this time, like all your life, then yes, just go to the one that has like the much better ingredients, a better nutrition profile. even if it has like one of these oils in it, I would much rather you be eating that than this other thing over there. Same thing if it's like all organic, but it has like soybean oil in it versus this other one that has maybe some added sugar and it's not organic and you have no idea where anything is coming from and it has the soybean oil in it, like go for the one that's better, okay? Because like I don't want to just, I tell all my clients this, so you should know that I'm not trying to overhaul your diet in one sitting, okay? Like this is a process. So don't think that it's good or bad because your better option chip has one of these in it, okay? So I want you to understand that it's all a process, it's all a continuum, and I don't want you to get scared if one of these things is in it. All I want you to do is understand why I'm telling you this, and I want you to just make a logical decision and a decision where you're well informed. Okay. So again, if it's helping you move from this option in terms of like negatively affecting your health to this option, let's just go with this option instead of like whole foods, less processed foods all the time, no matter what, make your own shit. Okay. Like you don't have to be down here in order to make progress. Okay. All right. Number 2. Okay, so really number 2 is kind of going to be like a mix of things. And really it's just food additives and like gums and things like that. So food additives such as gums, colorings, like, I guess like ingredients you don't know what they are. Because these are just really keeping things shelf stable. Okay, so just be aware of those things. Again, similar to the last one is if this is getting you closer to the goal, then it's allowing you to stick with the process and be consistent, then like go with this option versus this option, right? Okay, so just be very aware of that. And like I've read different things. So like gums affect people differently. If you have IBS or like some sort of digestive issue, then you might want to be more aware of these things than maybe someone who doesn't have those issues. Okay, so just be really aware of how the food is affecting you. All right, number 3. So this one is going to be added sugar. However, I'm putting a caveat on this because if you're an athlete, especially an endurance athlete or an athlete who is taking part in working out or competitions that are lasting more than an hour to an hour and a half, then in those situations, that's when things kind of get fuzzy. It's not that it doesn't matter, but it's really how it affects you. Okay. So there's like 60 to 100 different names for sugar. And I'm not going to list them all here, but I do have a list that I'll add to this. So really just be aware of, is this ingredient sugar or not? So like some things would be maltodextrin, corn solids, corn syrup, obviously high fructose corn syrup, sucrose, sucralose, lactose, dextrose, dextrin, okay, et cetera, et cetera. So like a lot of these like when it's like a spelled this wrong. I'm sorry. Dextrin, when it's like a rin at the end or an os at the end, that's a pretty good indication that it's a sugar. So if you are getting packaged foods that are slightly processed, really be on the lookout for these added sugars, because even if it's not showing up in the nutrition facts label as like carbs 20, added sugars 19, like if it's not showing up like that, or it doesn't look necessarily like it's a high amount of carbs and it fits your macros, I would still rather you be getting your sugar from natural sources. Any carbohydrate turns into a sugar in your body, but really it's about the breakdown that's occurring in your body. So do not cut out carbs, cut out added sugars that are basically man-made. Okay, that's what I'm saying. But if you are an athlete and you're taking place in those, or your competitions and workouts are in that window of longer than basically an hour, these things are going to be, some of these things are going to be helpful in basically keeping you fueled for your training sessions, whether it be before, during, or after. Okay, that where I want you to be more mindful of is, are you only eating those things around your workouts, or are you eating them the rest of the day too? Okay, because when they're in your workouts, around your workouts, it is going to be mostly contributing to your muscle glycogen repair and restore, not repair, but restore. And it really doesn't it doesn't have the same effect as if you're just eating it on a regular basis, but you're not like working out at that high intensity or that long intensity or high volume or anything like that. Okay, so really be mindful of that, because those things can help you, right? Okay, so basically those are the 3 things that I would suggest avoiding if you can. And again, we're using a sliding scale. Okay, so if this option up here is like the worst for your health, and that's what you're eating right now, but this option down here has maybe 1 or 2 of these things in it, but it's helping you get away from this option, go with this one. Okay, you don't have to go straight down here if it's going to cause you to feel like you're restricting, if it's going to cause you to feel like you can't be consistent, if it's going to cause you to feel like you are going to binge on that food, this food up here, because you feel restricted. Okay, so I want to meet you in the middle. So just remember that it's not all or nothing. It's definitely a sliding scale. Okay, the less you eat of it, the better off your health is probably going to be, but you have to take into consideration mental health as well. Okay, so that's all for this video. It probably is longer than I thought it was going to be, but on to the next one.